And what we'll finish next time is really the development of the head. And then, believe it or not, we'll be starting the tooth. We'll probably Tuesday or next Thursday, which will be chapter 5. We can be done very quickly. So what we want to point out here is that in the mesoderm, we will develop the axial skeleton, voluntary muscles, the dermis, lots of different tissues that are important. But one thing that we do develop here are really 3 types of mesoderm, which is always a question. There is lateral plate mesoderm, so write down lateral plate mesoderm. There is intermediate mesoderm, and there is paraxial mesoderm. Lateral plate mesoderm, so I put this down, will lead to other types of mesoderm here called splanchnopluric, which I'll explain. Intermediate mesoderm leads to the urinary system and genital system. And paraxial mesoderm leads to the axial skeleton, the voluntary muscle, and the dermis. We'll explain what the rest are as we go through this. What we now have is, this is going 3 weeks. We now are entering really a period of time when we have to develop the organs. In really starting in the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're going to develop the oral cavity, we're going to develop the mouth, we're going to develop nervous system, we're going to develop the neural crest cells, which will lead to enamel, will lead the mesoderm, and we have to fold the embryo because right now all we have is a flat plate. So we have a process here called neurulation, starts to develop into the nervous system. And what happens here, the edges of what we have of this primitive streak are called the neural crest. So where my knuckles are, that's going to be the neural crest. Fingers are the mesoderm. We develop an invagination here. The neural crest is here. We form a tube here. And we can form, ultimately, the formation of something called a neural tube, which is really part of the nervous system. That's neurulation. So in neurulation, we begin to form this tube, this notochord, into the mesoderm, right there. Again, we come in here, we form the neural tube here, right there. And this neural tube, towards the caudal end of the embryo, will become the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. Okay. The paraxial mesoderm that we'll show you, that remember here, I'm coming back here, paraxial mesoderm. See that? Remember I said this, muscle and dermis? So the paraxial mesoderm breaks up into somites. Somites, you'll see on the embryo, are segmentations. Okay? So here is paraxial mesoderm, lateral plate mesoderm, to the end, just the names. Every somite will make the skin over the somite, it's going to make the muscle, and will make the vertebrae. Okay? In the head region, the paraxial mesoderm become the musculature of their head and neck. Maybe I should isolate this down for you. The intermediate mesoderm, urogenital system, lateral plate mesoderm can become the viscera, the pericardium, peritoneum, blood, lymph, heart, and various other organs. In the head, that neural tube will expand and form the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Okay, now, what now happens is we have a flat embryo, and we have to fold the embryo. So you have to imagine this. Here is my hand. We have a flat primitive streak, right? My palm is down. I'm going to curl my fingers like this. You see how I'm curling my fingers? That is going to be the head fold. We're then going to fold the tail. So the embryo will begin to bend over like this. Like I'm cupping my palm. Now, it's flat. So we're going to have to fold the head fold to form something called the stomadeum, which I will demonstrate to you, which is the oral cavity. And that's going to cause the ectoderm to form the lining of the oral cavity. And we're going to see something called an oropharyngeal membrane. So folding begins really on day of 24 and really continues for a period of time. So here, let's take a look at this. So here we had the flat embryo. Okay, you got that now? Flat embryo. We now curve around. Right? The curving part around is called the neural plate. Here's going to be the yolk sac. We have a little growth of cells called the cardiac plate, which I'll explain to you in a moment. On the tail end, we're also going to fold around backwards. You've got me here? And now we continue to fold. We grow in. This grows in over here. Now this over here is separated from the head fold, right there. See where they two meet there? That's called the buccopharyngeal membrane. And now what happens is this part curves around like that, here. You got that? And there's that little bump here, right there, that's now over there. And you see it over there? That becomes the heart. This is the yolk sac. So now we're curving around here, right? And the space between the heart and this growing head, right there, that opening will be the stomadeum. And here, as the embryo is folded, see that? This bulge is the cardiac plate. That's the heart. You can see an eye developing here. That's the air that will develop, and this is the head. And between here and here is a membrane called the oropharyngeal membrane. That will separate out the oral cavity from the GI tract. They're isolated. And here, you see that? All the somites. And when we said the somites, go back here. Each somite has 2 vertebrae, muscle, and skin. That's what this is. This will come a vertebrae, 2 vertebrae, muscle, and skin around your backbone. Here's your tail. Here's the yolk sac. So here is, to review, we have the primitive streak. Here we're going to have something, the somites, the neural, what we call the neural folds. We have 38 somites, and that will form the skeleton structures of the head, the neck, and the trunk. Okay. So here is that neural fold in real life. And now what happens is this. We are folding, as I showed you. This is called the rostrocaudal axis, front and back. But now we have an issue. And that issue is this. Tearing out a sheet of paper. And what all I've done is done this. Head and neck. Right? But I have a flat sheet of paper. And now what happens is this. The edges of the embryo fold in, and now I close up the embryo. You got that? That is called the lateral fold. So not only do I have a lateral fold, but it's folded like this. Head, tail. So we have the lateral fold. We fold forward and back, the lateral fold. The neural crest cells, all right, migrate to the cranial sensory ganglion and forms connective tissue of the head. So here is the neural crest, and now here's what happens. We've now folded the head. This is the head, these which we'll do in a moment, and here will be the heart. So now that we've folded here, and you can see here the head folding in, and that opening, you see that? That's the stomadeum. You see that? You begin to recognize the face, don't you? This right there is the oropharyngeal membrane. This is the GI tract. So notice the head, really where the mouth is going to be, is the space between the head and the heart. Yes? Whoops. Head, heart, stomadeum. So we're folding over. Now, this bulge over here is called the frontal prominence. This is the frontal prominence. This here is the stomadeum. And this, see that? Is called the first brachial arch. What will that become? I wonder. What do you think it becomes? The lower jaw. So in another diagram, we fold, so that I need you to understand, we're going over, here's the oropharyngeal membrane. That's the oral pocket. This membrane will rupture in week 5, and now you'll have one continuous tube. And the cloacal membrane will also rupture, so you'll go from mouth to anus in a continuous pocket. Okay, we've done this. Now, to form the head, we have a problem, and that is this. We have the head fold that we showed you before, and it grows over here. We're going to form the olfactory placode, the orbital placode, and the otic placode, which is where the air will come here. We have 8 folds here called rhomboneers. I don't really ask that. The paraxial mesoderm, we have somites. We have neural crest cells migrating to this area that becomes the connective tissue for face development. And what's going to happen over here is we're going to fold into what we call brachial arches. Whoops, I'm repeating that. So we're going to have these brachial arches. Just get that here. I had this. I was cutting and pasting your lecture and didn't remove it. So what we have here in the embryo, in a 3.5-week embryo, is the forebrain, the oral pit, the stomideum. We have a maxillary process. We have a mandibular arch, the hyoid, and we're going to show you that right now. Okay, now, wherever that's going. We now have, thank you. I just took up is because someone said to me earlier that in the oral cavity in the notes, which I don't see that there. All right. So we're going to take a look at what we call brachial arches. Brachial arch 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we have something called brachial pouches. And we're going to form what's going to be the cardiovascular system. Now I have an outline of this as well. So here we go. By the 4th week, we have these pharyngeal arches on the embryo. And that's what some people said, that these were like gills. They are not gills. We're going to go take a look at this. But one thing that happens is what we call frontonasal processes and maxillary processes and mandibular arches, and we're going to show you where they come from. The arches are made of mesenchymal tissue lined with ectoderm and endoderm on the inside. Every arch is associated with a cranial nerve. They are associated with cartilage, and they're associated with an artery. And inside the arch is where we form all the tissue that's going to be the head and neck. So we have here, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th arch. This is the embryo. Early on, right here, this area, the head will become the frontal prominence. And the first fold under that, right here, is called the first brachial arch, also known as the mandibular arch. Okay? It is bilateral for the most part. Every arch, for the most part, can be formed by neural crest cells. Every arch has cartilage. And one thing we're going to deal with in the first arch is something called Meckel's cartilage. And what we're going to do is take a look at development of the mouth. So here is a picture of what it looks like. We're going to see cartilage. In each bulge is cartilage, an artery, and a nerve. Cartilage, artery, and a nerve. The ectoderm, the endoderm, and ultimately the spinal cord. So here I like to picture artery, cartilage, nerve. Artery, cartilage, nerve. The arches are separated here by brachial grooves or clefts. I think this is hard to envision. I do have a quick summary for you that I wrote for a student years ago. All right. The first arch is the mandibular arch. The mandibular arch becomes a maxillary and mandibular process. And I do ask you that. Okay?
First arch is the mandibular arch.
You'll go, I have this, yes, mandibular and maxillary, and we're going to show you maxillary and mandibular processes. I'm going to show you how we develop the mouth next time. The second arch is called the hyoid arch. It has the hyoid bone and the seventh cranial nerve. In the hyoid arch, there is cartilage that is called Reichert's cartilage. Okay? In the hyoid arch, we will form the muscles of the face, of facial expression. In the third arch, we develop the tongue and the ninth cranial nerve. In the fourth arch, it's the tongue, the laryngeal cartilages, and glossopharyngeal and vagus nerves. The fifth nerve will disappear, and the sixth arch will become also the ninth and 10th nerve, cranial nerves. Lots of things going on here. So here are the arches, okay? I did that again. So here is what we look like. Mandibular, hyoid, 3rd through 6th are the pharyngeal arches. Okay? 4 and 6 will combine. So we really have arches 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Again, first arch will also become the pouches. The pouch between the first and second arch becomes the external auditory meatus, the tympanic membrane, and the eustachian tube. The second pouch between 2 and 3 becomes the palatine tonsils. The third pouch becomes the thyroid and parathyroid glands. Fourth pouch, 2 parathyroid gland, and we lose the fifth one. And you can see how really kind of interesting things we have. Let's just repeat. So pouch 1, the middle ear and eustachian tube. Pouch 2, tonsils. 3 and 4, parathyroid glands. The thymus. Pouch 4, superior parathyroid glands. And really 5 disappear, but basically part of the thyroid gland. Now, where this is important is this. If the clefts and pouches don't develop, we can have a fistula developing here in the side of the head. So you can hear, we can have fistulas, we can have cysts all along here in the neck. So here, if we take a look, here I can see where I'm going to have cervical cysts. Here will be the palatine tonsil. You can see how that functions. So there is a lateral cervical cyst. So I have this on a handout, but I think we'll go through this quickly. Arch 1 is mandibular. It is the 5th cranial nerve. It is the muscles of mastication. Okay? It is the malleus and incus. Okay? And a cartilage called Meckel's cartilage. All right? This is where I'm going to stop. We'll finish this up on